And I'm live and no one's here. Yes, I'm by myself. Sorry about that, guys. I know I'll get together shortly, but I had to reboot everything. And sadly, I had 100 people in the room, which these days is a good number. But yeah, we got 2 people here. Thank you for following me over. So yeah, I don't know what was going on there. But I took the advice. Hey, homie, 789. Hello, Steve. Thank you. I took Johnny Knoxville's advice, who basically said, why don't you just pull the plug and redo everything, which is what I did. So people are jumping back in. Toby Kenobi's back. Sarah Callahan's back. Videos by L, Norway, Iowa, checking in. And Betty Anderson, welcome back. Hey, it's good to be back, my friends. Lance the Man, hey, Steve. And Mike B, a.k.a. the Drone Ranger. It's a good one. Spider Monkey, Al Brockett, Manuel Guerra. What car you go to? What car you go to? I'm not sure what that sentence means, but maybe you can clarify for me. Highway Dog waves, and I wave back, my friend, as well. Thank you very much. Frederick Bush, happy Father's Day, Steve. Yeah, you know, I don't have children, but I am one. My dad is still around. He's going to turn 90, the big 90 this year. So Song Yardbird checking from Elyria, Ohio, and Leslie Beckwith from Maine. And yeah, again, I don't know what was going on there with the YouTube live, but it wouldn't let me go live. I got the spinning wheel of death. Someone just said, oh yeah, what car show did you go to? I went to a car show last week at the M1 Concourse in Pontiac, big cars and coffee event, very, very large show. And yesterday I brought my Viper to a Cars and Coffee in Birmingham, Michigan at Past Diners Auto Zone. It's a bookstore that specializes in car books at 14 and Woodward. Fairly small show, but good turnout. And I actually met a guy who has a Viper. And here's the photograph I posted of my Viper in front of Past Diners. Actually, Past Diners is back behind my Viper, about 100 feet. But I had a good time there. But I met a guy who's got a Viper, looks just like mine, but his is the Roadster, and his is supercharged. And what's amazing is we've all seen those big blowers that they stick through the hood of cars. And this guy has one where it sneaks in underneath the hood. So you walk up to the car, it looks like a typical Viper. Pop the hood, and there's all this extra plumbing in there. And I recognize it because I've seen what they look like. And the guy goes, yeah, check this out. So the funny thing is, he had a 2000 with 6,000 miles. I've got a 99 with 5,000 miles. So I will be taking some road trips shortly. I've been playing with the cameras, and I'll be shooting some pretty cool video in the next week or two. So stay tuned for that. Daniel Kester checks in. And Daniel, I got a note from you. We'll get to you in a second. And Amy Joe is checking in from Grand Rapids. I hope things have calmed down over there. I know they had some rough times with some protests and so on. But I'm hoping things have calmed down. Johnny Knoxville, hola, 80 degrees and sunny in Bad Axe, Michigan, more at the bottom of the hour. And for those of you who are curious where I am, it's 82 degrees and sunny. We've had nothing but sunshine for the last week and a half. I ran 10 miles this morning. 10 miles this morning. And when I got back, I could have taken my shirt and just wrung it out, but that would have been gross. But I mean, it was hot. Like Robin Williams, Good Morning Vietnam. It's hot. Stanley, too. Greetings to all from the UP, eh? Yeah, I'm going to be taking my Viper to the UP, and I'm going to shoot some videos up there. I know where to take it. It's going to be pretty cool. Eberfan, hey, Steve, good to see you going live in the summer heat. All the best to you. Respectfully submitted, as always, in propria persona, which is in pro per, as we'd say it in Latin, meaning you're representing yourself. And thank you very much. I appreciate that. Adrian Davis, a lot of people still sitting in the other feed. I don't know how to shut the other feed off. So maybe we'll be like the cool people who figured this out, and they'll be all sitting going, hey, I wonder what's going on. Ram 50 V8, 72 and scattered storms in Champaign, Illinois today. Yeah, I think there's going to be some storms headed this way. I think they're calling for some tonight or tomorrow here in Michigan. And that long, like I said, several weeks of sunshine is going to come to an end. Irish Badass says, yo, I need a Jeep mechanic before I blow this thing up. Where are you located? Jeeps, one cool thing about Jeeps is they're fairly common vehicles. So finding Jeep mechanics is not that hard. It's much harder, for instance, to find a mechanic who can work on like on your MG or your Triumph automobile. So, Adrian Davis, I'd suggest popping back in there and letting them know you're here. I don't know how to do that without losing this feed. So, Ram50V8 says I posted a link to the others to let them know. Josh Bunton, 111 degrees in Needles, California, which, by the way, no matter what area you're talking about, Needles is not the most attractive name for a city, okay? Because I'm assuming that needles are like what are on a cactus, but then later on, of course, it'd be, potentially drug paraphernalia. So JJCEO40 says, Steve, please drive your Viper down to Chattanooga, Tennessee. And by the way, I am wearing the Rump Run shirt, and on the back, the original thumbnail I used this is a official volunteer shirt. My friends down there who put on the Rump Run, it got canceled earlier this year due to recent events in the news, and they pushed it back to October, I believe. I got the data here. I'll talk about that in a second. But thank you for checking in. I want to support you guys. It's a great cause. Don't know if I can get down there for the race or not, but I will do what I can. Irish Badass says he's in Royal Oak and needs a Jeep mechanic. You know who you want to contact, not that he's a mechanic, but he can hook you up, is David Tracy. David Tracy at Jalopnik is a Jeep fanatic to the point where it's almost classifiable as a mental illness. The guy loves Jeeps. He owns a bunch of Jeeps, and he knows everyone in that community. So check in with David Tracy over at Jalopnik. You can find him very easily there. He'll have a, Tracy at Jalopnik type email address. Duncan Campbell, hey, Steve from Melbourne. It's 58F here. Now, you guys, I'm assuming it's your first day of winter, right? If it's our first day of summer, why not? Sherry Canary says, hello, just came from the other feed. Yeah, I'm sorry. I don't know what happened there. Technical difficulties of the sort that do happen from time to time on the intranet. Stanley too says, daughter's taking me to the Fitz for lunch. Are you talking about in Eagle River? If so, that's there's a restaurant called Fitzgerald's that's right on the beach in Eagle River. Beautiful little town, beautiful place. Eagle River, of course, is where they found Douglas Houghton's body the following year after he had his boating accident, which he drowned in 1845. They found him in 46. And I've done a video where I took my canoe out there and traveled that little stretch. It's one of my favorite places on earth. The Keweenaw Peninsula is, but I mean, that's one of my specific places I like a lot in that area. Sub GR77 checking in from Davison, Michigan. Daniel Newman, do you have a photographic memory? Oh, no. Yeah, no, my memory is one of those things where if it's something I'm interested in, I'll remember it. If not, whoo, it's gone. And I pride myself in knowing where I can find stuff. So I can find the details by going and looking. Johnny Knoxville, there's Eagle River, Wisconsin is different than Eagle River, Michigan. Eagle River, Michigan's at the top of the Keweenaw Peninsula. I know Eagle River, Wisconsin is also confusing to people. Yeah, and Daniel Player says that Johnny Knoxville tipped him off that he should skip the other feed, and I apologize. I don't know. I'm going to experiment here for a split second, see what happens if I hate to do this. I'm scared. No, never mind. I'm not going to do it. I could open up another tab and go there, but I'm worried that if I go there and do that, it's going to kick me off this. So I'd rather not do that. Johnny Knoxville says Eagle River, Wisconsin is legendary. I've never been there, but I have heard of it obviously quite a bit because it confuses people when I talk about Eagle River without specifying Eagle River, Michigan. Toby Kenobi's watching English Premier League, Aston Villa versus Chelsea. Are they back to like full games in front of full crowds, or is it a rerun, or are they playing in an empty stadium? Because that's the curious thing about all of this stuff. Okay. Well, J. Paul says I should try it and close the other feed. Let me see. First of all, let's see if I open up another tab and come back here. Am I still here? Okay, I'm still good. Now, if I open the other tab and go here, are we still good? Are we still good? Okay, we appear to still be good. Okay, hang on. Yeah, Don C, don't touch that dial. It's easier for you to say. I'm going to attempt to go in here go there, and click that, and delete that. I understand this, and I delete that. Because I just deleted the other feed. So am I still here? Okay. So I'm hoping we're still here. But Robert Hodgins says, you mentioned traveling this morning. Do you have a license? No, you don't need a license to travel. That's the whole point. Videos by Al. You have no idea. I'm so paranoid. I've been in the middle of the live stream and had it lock up on me. And you always wonder, did I do it? Or, so Lorian Uresh says, Man U played 2 days ago. Okay. Greetings from Memphis, Tennessee. James Martin, thanks for displaying the St. Jude cowbell. Laura is thrilled to see it. Yeah. I think it's pretty clear. We can always use more cowbell, first of all, right? And second of all, it's a good cause. So I appreciate that. Driving Freaks, the sunny is 68 in Great Falls, Montana. Jan Gunner says they've started with soccer in Norway. First game of the season last Thursday with empty stadiums. Wow. That is, that's one of those things that'd be so weird to play in front of an empty stadium, especially when you're used to having a full house, MH08, I'm working again, have a week's worth of Lato to catch up on. Oh. Sam Walton 8 from Missouri. Hey, how is Steve doing today? Pretty good. I ran 10 miles this morning, so I'm dehydrated. I actually brought in 2 bottles of Gatorade for that purpose specifically. The other one will be warm by the time I get to it, but I need to rehydrate. Rational Bushcraft, if you've been to Lake and Land Junkyard, driven by it many times, never stopped. Macintosh for Sheriffs, ever find the toilet paper? I'm glad you asked me that, because the answer is no. The person who claimed they sent me the toilet paper never responded. But I have to tell you that one of the viewers of this channel, Matthew, and he told me I can say his name, said, Steve, just so you don't feel disappointed, I sent you a case of toilet paper right here. And it showed up at my office. And in fact, it is. I haven't opened it yet, but it is a case of toilet paper. So for those of you who wonder, I'm using the Rapala to be a box opener. I get all kinds of cool stuff sent to me, don't get me wrong. But Matthew thought, you know something, Steve? Just so you know, some people out there have a sense of humor. So here you go. This is not a plug for anybody, like brand name or anything like that. I'm just a single man. This right here will last me through the winter and probably early spring. But the good news is that Matthew said, hey, Steve, I sent you a case of toilet paper. There you go. So there I go. Johnny Knoxville, any chance we can get autographed rolls of toilet paper? I'd consider it, but it'd cost so much to send. I'm sure it'd be cost prohibitive. So, and Daniel Kester says, Steve, please stay hydrated. And Daniel, by the way, I'll mention Daniel. I don't think Daniel will mind me saying this, but Daniel sent me a note. And it's kind of funny because I've mentioned before, I love getting analog mail, not email. I like that too, but analog mail. When somebody sits down and takes a piece of paper and puts pen to it, as we say, and writes me a note, it just seems a little warmer way to communicate. And so he wrote me a note and, hey, Steve, basically I've got 2 books to send you. And he sent me 2 books. And, he goes, at the end, he does say, if you want to, you can read this. So, he sent me along a couple of books here. Haven't gotten a chance to read them yet, but a Johnny Tremaine book and a book about the incredible journey of a family through parts of Russia, walking across the Gobi Desert with 8 children across the continent of China and to America. That's a long walk, walking across China, Russia, and then coming to America. So that's a book called Fulfilling God's Will. I'll check that out also. I appreciate that. And then just to round out the mailbag, I got a note from my buddies, Jeremy and Shauna down there in Tennessee, who are the ones who do the rump run. That's the shirt I'm wearing today, and it says volunteer on the back. So these are what the volunteers will be wearing. And it says, hey, Steve, thanks again for the numerous shout outs for the rump run by wearing the shirt that was sent to you. And I have the shirt, and I've worn it on camera a few times. This one's the brand new one. This is orange, as you can probably tell. And it says, as you are probably aware, the original date of the run was canceled due to current events in the news. It has been rescheduled for October 3rd, 2020. We would love to have you there, and we'll roll out the red carpet for you if you can make it. And I don't know if I can or not. I mentioned before, and I hate to be a complainer about this, but it's a short run, and I run in October. I run a full marathon, and I like to run half marathons and longer, but we'll see. We'll see. And by the way, he reminded me that he's the gentleman I sent the seeds to. Remember, I bought the seeds when people are saying you couldn't buy seeds in Michigan. I went out and bought seeds, and he promised to find the seeds a nice home. So he did that. And so then he says, I've also included another rump run shirt for you. But they sent me the one of this color because the other one would apparently be too blinding. And that would be in Chattanooga, Tennessee. So Jeremy and Shauna, and they're putting on the rump run to help conquer colon cancer. October 3rd, 2020, 9 a.m. It's a closed course. They got kids' activities, family fun, goodie bags. You can run it, you can walk it, and there are even going to be age group awards. So it sounds like a great thing. So I highly recommend it. And I admire the fact that you went out and actually, did all the work, but also when you rescheduled, you took care of that. Johnny Knoxville says, send Steve Viper tires. I don't need Viper tires now because I just got a set. So I think I've mentioned this before, but I'm not sure. But the Viper I bought had the original tires on it from 1999. Hence, they were 21 years old. And I had my friend Mark Lieberman at Nostalgic Motoring track me down a set of tires for it. And I didn't get track tires. I actually got like road tires. I can drive it. And it's amazing how different it feels. It really is. So I will be doing some road trips shortly and shooting some video. Richard Burke, I sent you a book about a canoe. Are you talking about Paddle to the Sea or a different book? Or is it recent or a little while ago? Because I mean, I used to do opening mail things on the air, and I stopped doing that only because the mail it comes and goes in waves. So Space Raptor says the USAF marathon in September is canceled. Oh, that's too bad. Because I'm registered to run the Free Press Marathon, which is the third weekend, I think, of October. I'm hoping it's still going to happen. So, we'll see. We'll hope. So, Paul Lemke, did you roast the old tires? No, actually, we took them off. I put them up. They're on display in my garage. They're up. I've got some shelves that I had nothing else up there, so I put them up there. They're big tires. They're the backs are about this wide. They're huge. It's scary. Captain Bluebeard says, yeah, there's a movie, Paddle to Sea. I remember seeing that. And it's it was a low budget production, but the story's really good. And I've told people who live in the Great Lakes area that you that you should let your kids read Paddle to Sea. It's a great way for them to understand the Great Lakes and how important they are and the history of them and so on. It's a fabulous book. Matthew Showstrom, Steve, did I miss you showing my gift? Since you're here, I'll show you. Here it is, my friend. Thank you very much. So, but that's from Matthew. That is not from the person you claimed to have sent it previously. I never heard back from that person. David Nichols says, you must be Finnish. You pronounced Rapala correctly. Just like my buddy Esko with the unpronounceable last name that is a Finn. Yeah, the Finns have a bunch of really weird rules, and one of them is that for multi-syllable words, you always accent the first syllable. So it's Rapala, not Rapala. But it's it's one of those things. The funny thing is that up in the Upper Peninsula of Michigan is a town called Baraga, and the man it's named after, his name is Baraga. There's no question it was Baraga. And because of all the local Finns, they just pronounce it Baraga because that's how you pronounce, because you accent the first syllable and try to correct them. They don't care. No, it's Baraga. It's Baraga. So, Bob Bong says it's 80 degrees and sunny in Benton Harbor. Daniel Kester says don't squeeze the Charmin. Well, number one, it's Angel Soft, but number two, I think once you buy it, you're allowed to squeeze it. But that was a weird. What's funny about that is it got across such an interesting little angle about toilet paper. Don't squeeze the Charmin, and it's one of those advertising campaigns. We've talked about this before. Like the Hertz Rent-A-Cars, right? It was the Hertz Mustangs, the Hertz Shelbys. That once in a while an advertising campaign catches fire like that and actually sticks with you, and it does the job that the ads are supposed to do. And the Charmin commercials are a great example of it. So that's pretty funny. Yeah, Mr. Whipple is a rock star. R.W. Monday. Bill Taylor, the Great Lakes, shark-free and salt-free since 10,000 BC. Johnny Knoxville says he's got a Rapala knife sharpener. What's funny about Rapala is a company that's more known for its lures. And in fact, there's a little silver fish lure they make that's often nicknamed the Rapala. Now, if you go to a fishing section in a big store, or you go to Bass Pro Shops and you go into the lure section, Rapala makes more lures of all sorts and types. But there's one in particular they're known for as being the Rapala when they got them famous. But they branched out into other things. And the knife is actually designed by a guy named Martini. I'm not sure how a guy with that name wound up in Finland designing knives, but I'm sure someone will tell me. But I was on Amazon one day, and I'd run the search Rapala because I got a t-shirt that says Rapala on it, and up popped the Rapala knife. And I'm like, I need one of those too. Dennis Baraba, what do you think of the Red Bears and the Charmin ads? I think those are, in my opinion, stupid. I never cared for those ads. I admit, I guess I'm getting old. I watch TV now, and if the commercials get on, half the time I'm going, what a stupid commercial. And 75% of them are insurance commercials, Geico commercials. I mean, I understand they want you to know the name Geico, but they're not getting across any point about their insurance except that supposedly it's cheaper than somebody else's. Yeah, but do you pay claims? That's what I'd like to know. Ron Rogers, I always wanted a Cosworth Vega. Cosworth Vegas. There was a guy who lived near me when I had my paper route, and I used to walk by it every day. The Vega was the little compact car that Chevrolet built. Think of Pinto or that era, that type of car. And I actually owned a Vega at one point in time. They built them for a few years, but they were generally considered to be really, really cheap, inexpensive cars. They didn't last that long. And the problem is that somebody always goes, hey, we should make a high-performance version of this. And somebody decided to take an engine from Cosworth, which is a British high-performance company, and have them hop it up and then stick it in a Vega and sell it. And it was black, as I recall, with gold pinstripes on it. May have been available in other color combinations. I'm not sure. But I remember seeing the Cosworth Vega, but I seem to recall that they're very rare and unusual. But were they any good? Were they fast? Half the time when they come up with those types of vehicles that are the hopped up version of something weird, I mean, you could get a Gremlin X, right? A Gremlin with, I believe, a V8 engine in it. But I don't know how fast they were, so. Song Yardbird says, you will now be receiving toilet paper en masse via the mail. It'd be like the legend of Octopus in Detroit. I don't know about that. By the way, I'm not encouraging that. If you want to send me mail, great. You want to send me stuff for the shelf, that's great. I don't need toilet paper, okay? I think that's part of the joke. But in case you don't know what song Yardbird's getting back at, and most people in the Midwest know this, but years ago, someone, as sort of a practical joke, and nobody quite understands why, went to the Detroit Red Wings hockey game during a playoff and threw an octopus onto the ice, a dead octopus. And that became a thing to such a point that you can now buy Red Wings clothing with octopus on them, octopi. And there were actually times where they actually were searching people and saying, if you get caught bringing an octopus into the arena, you'll get ejected and so on. And what's always sad is the Red Wings would score, people are screaming and yelling, and all of a sudden, and this octopus just hits the ice with that sound, by the way. And some poor guy's got to come out with a shovel and shovel up the octopus. Once in a while, a brave guy'd walk out and pick it up and carry it off the ice. And I always just thought to myself, octopus is such a cool creature. And I understand that people do eat them. I get that. But, you watch the Jacques Cousteau special with the octopus. And, to think that this big, glorious, intelligent creature is living in the ocean. And somehow he crosses paths with an octopus fisherman who catches him, and he winds up going through the channels of commerce and ends up in Detroit, of all places. And he's being sold at some place that deals in ocean goods, and some doofus buys him because they have tickets to the Red Wings game, and they smuggle him in, and when the Red Wings score a goal, all of a sudden, and the octopus hits the ice. And you go, that's just so sad to think about. SubGR77 says the octopus was because it used to be 8 wins for the Stanley Cup. That's one of the theories I've heard floated, but there's no way to know why anybody does anything. And I've always thought that may have been somebody backfilling, trying to figure out what the significance of it was. So I don't think they know who started it. So, Sherry Canary says, my boyfriend drove a Vega back in 1981. That's how I learned to drive a manual transmission. Yeah, my hat's off to you. I had a Chevy Vega briefly, and it also had a clutch. And I've had a couple vehicles along the way that had manual transmissions. But, I've had some people ask me, because, my Viper's got a 6-speed manual. And whenever somebody asks me, they, jokingly, if they can drive it. Because you know what the answer is going to be. I always ask, do you know how to drive a clutch? And you'd be surprised at people who say, no, I don't. It's like, well, you ain't learning on my car. So, yeah, and Michael Goodwin points out the oddity that if they went to all that trouble and brought the octopus to the game, what happens if it was a shutout? Like, do you literally sneak it back out, bring it back the next day, or do you just throw it on the ice for the fun of it? So I seem to recall that there were several octopus being thrown on the ice, usually around the time that a goal gets scored. But I think sometimes the game would just end in the the octopi fly. So Joel Jensen says, I think the Vega had an AMC 401 in it. The Vega what? Because I know the Vegas often had the little 4 cylinders in them too. Dan DeClerc says the Chevy Vega was built at the Lordstown plant in Ohio. I think that's true. It rings a bell. And one of the things that's interesting about that, I mentioned that the Lordstown plant is the one that got closed a couple of years ago. They sold it. GM sold it. And now Ohio is thinking maybe they should get some of their tax benefits back that they gave up at one point in time. So it's unclear what's going to happen down there. But yeah, the Vega was part of the legacy of that plant. JJ CEO 40 says, would an octopus help the Lions win more games? No, at this point, it would take magic. You'd actually need to get a sorcerer or some kind of person with magical powers, or possibly even a deity. I think if some, and again, I'm trying to be as non-denominational about this, but let's assume that we are not alone. Let's assume that there is a higher power, okay, a higher power that controls the fate of man, that created the planet and all that dwells on the planet and watches over us, it would take that entity and some work to actually make the Lions win. The Detroit Lions are one of the worst organizations in any organized sport. And I'm not sure I need to specify organized sport. It might be one of the worst organizations ever. In the world of organizational history, in just organizations, the Detroit Lions organization is a blasphemy to the word organization. And part of the problem is that the Detroit Lions are owned by a family, and the family's owned them for so long, and they make money whether they win or lose. So the family's like, who cares? They're winning because they make money. And people in Detroit will go watch the Lions play no matter how bad they are. And so, the statistics on how far they've gone in the postseason is a misnomer, because when you don't go anywhere, it's not really a statistic. And they've been so bad for so long that I've often thought that one of two things needs to happen, possibly both. It could be that either the NFL needs to step in and go, you guys don't care about this team, and force them to sell it to somebody else, or the fans need to get smart and stop going to the games. Stop going to the games. The fact that you go to the game, you buy the ticket, you buy the $15 beer, means that the owners are going to go, who cares if they win or lose? We don't care. We'll just keep losing because we make money. So it's sad. Yeah, Nine Knot says, it breaks my heart because Barry Sanders is one of my favorite players ever. They've had a bunch of good players along the way, but one player won't do it for a franchise. I mean, Barry Sanders is one of the guys who seemingly got them closer to being successful, but unfortunately, no. And so, football is a strange game. I mean, because of the, look how large the teams are, and you've got offense, you got defense. A good quarterback won't do it either. You need a good offensive line. You need a good defense. You need good kickers. You need special teams. And unfortunately, the people who've been managing and running the Lions for the last 40 or 50 years don't care. Either they don't care or they're incompetent. So what are you going to do? I see an argument's broken out about the Toronto Maple Leafs, and I don't know as much about them. This happens in a lot of sports. And famously what will happen is, and I also know in Canadian football, there's been a couple examples where, Homie789 says, come on, it should be a great team. You have Matt Stafford. Okay. And again, Matt Stafford is a great player, but as a quarterback, how many games can you win when the guy's laying on his back? And so one player won't do it. You need all of these moving parts, and they're apparently not an ability to do it. Sub GR77 says in 1991 the Lions were stacked and then laid an egg in the playoffs. Yeah, it's they've shown some promise, but promise ain't cutting it for me. So Daniel Kessler says, don't care or incompetent or both. And that's exactly right. Dan DeClerc, Matt Stafford is overrated. Well, the other funny thing is, this happens too, where somebody will be at one franchise and they'll get traded. It doesn't happen as often in football as it does like in baseball. And they'll flourish somewhere else. And you realize, oh, wait, it's this environment here was bad. They went over here and now they're rocking it. Gee, I wonder how that is. So Doug Jones checking from Markham, Canada, where it's roasting today. Yeah, I got 83 degrees here right now. And I've mentioned before, I've got a little thermometer in the studio here at 75 degrees right now and 57% in the humidity. Oh, boy. Homie says he was being facetious, but no, that's the point. You can have one great player. Doesn't do it in football, in basketball, where you got 5 guys on the court, right? One guy makes a huge difference, ask, the Chicago Bulls, right? But when you've got, a football team and you've got the offense and you got defense, and you look at all the people on the sidelines, you go, one guy in that group ain't going to save that team. So Mark Mazzaro says, check the article out about Lordstown, out of Vega producing 100 cars per hour. You know, it's funny. And thank you for mentioning that. I'd forgotten. I read that story. The Lordstown plant was where they're building the Vega. And the Vega was rushed to market because General Motors wanted to have a small, inexpensive, light car to compete with the Pintos and the foreign imports. So they came up with a bunch of these basic guidelines. They wanted it to weigh under 2,000 pounds and cost $2,000 and half these goals they don't meet. They wind up going over this and they prices over that. But there was a time where they were building them and they decided that one way they could lower the cost of the car was building them faster because you're paying the workers by the hour, right? Workers can only work so fast. And one of the problems with an assembly line, and I've talked to guys who work on assembly lines. I've talked to guys who've got the craziest stories about stuff happening in assembly lines. And I mean, I've talked to a guy who literally stood at the end of the assembly line and just simply checked the fluids on stuff and then gave it the go ahead. I talked to another guy who installed the brake pedal and the accelerator pedal on a car as it came down the assembly line. And he had to climb in like backwards and upside down with the things in his hands and a gun and like a pneumatic drill type gun. And then climb back out and repeat that process. And I forgot how long the car was at his station, but he had to do that all day long. He could take a short break, but all day long. And the problem is that if something goes wrong with your installation, you can't stop the assembly line because you screwed up. So what happens is they hope that someone down the other end is going to catch that you made a mistake, and hopefully they can fix it at that end of the line. And so when they started pushing the cars through, it was almost like the I Love Lucy episode, she's making the candy, right? They start pushing the cars through and they go, well, do it faster, faster, faster. All that's happening is you're getting more cars at the other end that are lower quality. And I mean, all the car companies are guilty of this, at least in America. I read a book about the history of Chrysler. And there's a point in the 1970s where Chrysler was shipping so many cars with defects that they were sending notes to the dealer saying, when you get the car, find all the problems on it, and you can bill us for warranty work. Well, they don't want to be doing car inspections. So they would take the car and sell it. And then when the customer came back and said, hey, the glove box fell off, they'd say, oh, okay. And they would install the glove box and bill Chrysler. But the customer's going, I bought a brand new car and the glove box door fell off. And they didn't understand that the glove box door falling off is a 5-minute fix. So if you bill a mechanic, whatever the minimum rate is, it's $5-10 back then, probably less. But the cost to the consumer who's got to bring the vehicle back in to the dealer and say, my glove box door fell off, wondering if they're going to fix it, and they do fix it, and spending the morning at the dealership because some idiot quality inspector at the factory said, push it through, let the dealership worry about it. And the problem is that those kinds of reputational damages that happen to a brand. I've known people who said, I bought a car, it was such a piece of junk, things were breaking on it. Well, then they don't buy another one of those cars. They then buy something else. So, like I said, those problems happen everywhere, but Vegas just were plagued with quality issues and build issues. And don't get me wrong, if you went back and found the guys who designed it and said, let's build this car under perfect circumstances and assemble it properly, wasn't a bad car for what it was, but it had a bunch of problems that followed it along. So Mark Reynolds says, don't buy a car on a Monday or a Friday. I don't know that anybody's ever done a statistical analysis of that, but, and I'm not joking on this one, they often talk about how there are obviously cars that come down the assembly line and they're not put together properly for whatever reason. And the joke is that if you get one that's built on a Sunday, on a Monday or a Friday, that Monday the guy's hung over doing the work and Friday he wants to get out of there. But believe it or not, they have done studies And they find that you don't want to buy a vehicle in the first year of its model or the last year. So in other words, they're about to discontinue a model. Don't buy the last year. And they're starting a new model. No matter how good it looks, don't buy the first year. Because the first year, they're still working at the bugs in the assembly line. In the last year, they're in a hurry to clear the line so they can tear the line down and replace it with something else. So that's always a legitimate concern. So if there's a particular car you like, they built over a long period of time, you don't first year, last year, and also be careful around the years of massive changes. So where they go to a completely different body style, for instance, or completely different drivetrain or something of that nature, you're going to want to be very, very careful with the last year and the first year. So there you go. JJ CEO 40, as a local, who do you think was right in the Lee Iacocca Henry Ford II feud? I don't know that much about it, but I do know that Lee Iacocca was a huge, oversized personality, and so were the Fords, all of them. And I know that Lee Iacocca rose very, very high up in the Ford Motor Company, and he was a salesman. That guy could sell anybody anything. He was good at selling cars, but I know that there came a time where he could only go so high in the Ford business when there's Fords there. And so he wound up over at Chrysler and did quite well there too. But I don't know much about the personalities or the actual feud between them. I just know that it's like Bob Lutz. I was actually talking to a guy at the car show the other day about Bob Lutz. Very, very nice guy. Lives in Michigan, car guy. And he's one of these guys who worked at a bunch of different car companies. Everywhere he went, everything he touched seemingly turned to gold. And the guy just has a really good knack and understanding of cars. And, that's the kind of guy you want running your company, to walk in and go, okay, I like that, but I don't like that. Because there are people out there who want to do studies on it. There's people out there who want to try to examine it scientifically. And this guy just had a gut where he's like, no, that right there is good. That right there is not good. And he was right, so. 90 knots. I met him when I was a kid once. Are we talking about Lee Iacocca? Out of context. I don't know these things. Sub GR77 says Tesla is building vehicles that way. Sadly, they need competition in the EV market to force them to change. I've heard some stories about vehicles coming from Tesla brand new with problems that were obviously assembly line related. But I've also heard they took care of them pretty quickly. So I don't know. I'd be curious to know what the count is. Consumer Reports and a few other organizations out there track how many warranty repairs are done on a particular vehicle. And I know someone's going to point this out, that Tesla is the company that was a little while there labeling warranty repairs as goodwill. And the question is, were they doing that to try to skewer the numbers or something? Because they were not doing it for legal purposes. People go, yeah, it gets them out of the lemon law. No, it doesn't. I need a cough button. I haven't got one. Sub GR77 points out that Bob Lutz is also known as Bombastic Bob. Still lives in Michigan. Yeah, I met Bob at a thing I spoke at a few years ago. He talked about, we were on a panel about cars in Michigan. And very, very nice guy. He's also a pilot. He's a former Marine. That guy's resume is just mind-blowing. I mean, you look at his resume, like, I want to hang out with this guy. Peter Mandix points out that Lutz was also involved in the creation of the Viper. Several people were involved in that. But Bob Lutz was at Chrysler at the time. And he was one of the people who said, we built this show car. Maybe we should sell them. Doug Jones, most cars now are held together with adhesive. I know they use all kinds of wacky modern technology on cars these days. Daniel Kester, I've done a genealogy on my surname going back to 1750. My father's done Leito back earlier than that even. I think 1600s, which is even harder in Finland, but that's another story altogether. Danny Bupri, will Tesla ever enter NASCAR? That's an interesting question, whether or not NASCAR ever have electric motors. I know there's obviously the Formula cars that have gone electric. So Betty Anderson says, I've purchased all my vehicles using Consumer Reports recommendations, never disappointed. Yeah, I know a lot of people who are like that. And it's, they base it on a lot of research, and I like the work they do. They're not a nonprofit, of course. MH08 says, I checked out the Blue October this week, kind of dark. It depends on what songs you're looking at. Blue October is a band I like a lot. I've worn their shirts on camera 3 or 4 times. I've seen them live 3 times. And they are fabulous in concert. They're from Texas. It's just a bunch of guys who've been doing music that kind of falls outside of the mainstream as far as rock and roll goes. So outside of the Texas area, they don't get a lot of airplay. I'm not sure how I found them, but once I found them, I've been checking out their music. I like them a lot. I'd recommend you check out a song called She's My Ride Home, is one song that did pretty well. But they've got like 15 or 20 albums, so got a lot of stuff. But Justin Furstenfeld, who's the lead singer, and he's also the songwriter, writes a lot of stuff that's very, very autobiographical. And he had some dark times in his life. And in a dramatic or ironic sense, we all see the stories about the rock stars who burn out and have problems and issues and so on. And he apparently went through all of that and came out on the other side, and he's alive. And so he writes songs about what he went through and where he is now. And so as far as that goes, he's got some dark music, but the dark music is a creation or outcome of where he went and in his musical journey. And I just like the guys because I like the way their music sounds, but also they have just the fact that there's an authentic feeling to the music because the music is inspired by this guy's life, and it's very, very autobiographical. I like that. So MH08, I just let the autoplay run for the first 3 tunes. Check out, they also have a song called I Want It, which is a good song. So 90 Knot says, that's my favorite Blue October song. Which one? She's My Ride Home? That's an older song. But Vicky Clark, I've been listening to Puddles. He's awesome. Thanks for recommending him. Puddles the Clown is the guy, he was on America's Got Talent. That's where I saw him. 6'8", dresses like a clown, does not ever speak. He only sings. And he is a brilliant artist. He's doing cover songs, but he does them in ways that you wouldn't imagine possible. And he darkens a lot of the songs up because he turns them into sad songs. A lot of them are sad songs. But it's pure genius. I if you get it, you get it. If you don't, you don't. And I apologize. But I've seen him in concert also, and I've met him. He's 6'8". He's towering over me. This gigantic clown. But he's such a talent. And so I urge you, if you don't know what I'm talking about, go onto YouTube and type in Puddles AGT, and you'll get his performance where he does the song Chandelier by Sia. And his version of it is different, and it's insanely good. And it's just the whole package. I love the guy. So Doug Jones, what's your favorite one-hit wonder song? Oh, I wouldn't know where to begin. There are so many one-hit wonders out there. You'd have to specify like by the time frame and whether you're on a happy song, novelty song, sad song. Ilya Alawa says, do you ever listen to Finnish music? And I'm going to get some grief on this one, I bet. I'm not going to pronounce his name exactly correctly, but I love Lauri Taka. I've got several of his albums. And Lauri Taka, Tahka, I believe, but there's umlauts over the A's. And Lauri is a common Finnish name for men. And he's a singer-songwriter. He sings in Finnish, so I don't understand a word of what he's saying, but I love him. I think he's great. And he was in a couple other bands or projects prior to this. But I think he's very, very good. Sadly, he doesn't tour outside of Finland, as far as I can tell. Singing in Finnish, he'll probably have a hard time getting an audience in America. But he's one of my favorite current musicians. Like I said, I bought a bunch of his stuff, and I had a hard time finding it because it's not available in America. So I had to order it from Finland. But I have friends over here who hook me up. Dewan Guy says Brandy by Looking Glass. That's a great song, Brandy by Looking Glass. Brandy, you're a fine girl. And believe it or not, the Red Hot Chili Peppers used to perform that song live. And if you check out their live performances of it, you realize that these guys are good, referring to the Red Hot Chili Peppers, who I'm not normally a huge fan of. But they have just the most simple setup, guitar, bass, drums, and a singer. And they can sing something like Brandy and make it sound good, but not like it's a cover. But yeah, it's a great song. Rick Blaine, 1941, In-A-Gadda-Da-Vida. Which, by the way, how many of you honestly realized that the man was trying to say in the Garden of Eden? How long was it before you realized that? Iron Butterfly. And Iron Butterfly, of course, the song originally is like 17 minutes long. It's a whole side of an LP. It's like 17 minutes long. And they had some shorter versions of it for airplay. It's catchy, but it was certainly from an era involving hallucinogenics and electric guitars. Thanatos Felicitas says, I bet you like the song Mexican Radio by Wall of Voodoo. I'm familiar with it. I'm not a huge fan. KROQ Los Angeles used to play that song, so I'm aware of it. Fred Hill says, on the Viper there, is it a V10? Yes. How many ponies? About 425 horses. What size is it in liters? 8, my friends. 8. 488 cubic inches. Jaguars with a V12 and never able to keep it tuned. It had a 6-pack. Yeah, I've heard issues with Jaguar, or Jaguars, they say. But the engines and the Vipers, they pretty much ironed all that out, and it's pretty reliable. Ghost Shadow, is there any song that just annoys you that makes you turn the radio off? Oh, there's a bunch. There's the ones that make me want to punch the radio. But again, I hate to rip on music because it's gonna be somebody else go, that's my favorite song. That's the song I danced to at my wedding. MH08 says Rock On by David Essex. That's a great song. Dixie Champagne, Indiana Wants Me by R. Dean Taylor. Singer-songwriter A&R man out of Motown. Singing was a side hustle for him, though he did so very well. That happened a lot, by the way, Dixie, and I'm sure you know this, where there's a singer-songwriter who then has a hit with one of their own songs, and people go like, who's that? Not realizing that the guy was writing all these hits for other people. And was it you? Someone sent me the book, the autobiography of Jimmy Webb. And I have to now apologize because someone sent me Jimmy Webb's autobiography, which is called Cake and the Rain. And I had jokingly said that I personally think that line from MacArthur Park is one of the worst lines in music. And there's a line in MacArthur Park where the singer says, someone left a cake out in the rain, and I don't think I'll ever have that recipe again. And the rhyme bothered me, but the image of a cake in the rain just seemed so stupid to me. And so I read Jimmy Webb's autobiography, and Jimmy Webb wrote the song. And among other things, he acknowledges that line by calling his book Cake in the Rain. But when you open it up, the dedication page, he has in there the quote where it came from. And I forgot the poet's name. Someone else will tell me. But the poet who has the song that's in Four Weddings and a Funeral, the poet who wrote the poem that's in Four Weddings and a Funeral, it's read at the one funeral, about the funeral blues. That poet had a skin condition. And describing it to somebody, he said, my face looks like somebody left a cake out in the rain. And Jimmy Webb read that, and he's like, wow, And so he worked it into a song. So I have to apologize now for having made fun of that line because I only understood it in the context of that song. I never understood it in the larger context. So Fred Hill says John Elway has a Viper. I believe it's Generation 1. It has no top. Yeah, I remember John Elway was one of the first people to get a Viper. I remember the time that was a big deal. It's hard to get them, and he was one of the people who got one. Don't know if he still has it or not, but I know he did at one point in time. Joel Jensen mentions Alice's Restaurant. Of course, that's the classic. It's become like a Thanksgiving tradition. Arlo Guthrie, of course. Tom, Muskrat Love. I am convinced Muskrat Love would not have gotten any airplay if Love Will Keep Us Together hadn't been a hit. But the Captain and Tennille had a song called Love Will Keep Us Together, which was one of those songs that got overplayed to the point, it didn't matter if you liked it the first time. You were sick of that song shortly after. And anytime somebody has a hit, the radio station goes, like, what's the next song? What's the next? And so the next song, I believe, was Muskrat Love. And it's one of the dumbest songs ever that got played on the radio. So J. Paul, as a DJ, did you ever play Alice's Restaurant? Believe it or not, I never did. I never worked at a station that had that format at that time. I worked at a couple oldies stations that did not have the song in the rotation. Alice's Restaurant became more of a classic rock thing somehow. So Bill Taylor, One Toke Over the Line, sing on Lawrence Welk as a gospel song. Really? Brewer and Shipley. JJ CEO, Brand New Key by Melanie. I like that song. I don't care what you say. See, that's a great example of a goofy song that most people, when they hear the song, hate it. And I admit that the woman, Melanie, who's singing it, is singing it in kind of a goofy way, but it's catchy, it's funny, and I actually like that song. So, like I said, you can't explain your musical taste. Jim Bergen says W.H. Auden with a question mark. You are correct, my friend. W.H. Auden is the poet I was thinking of who wrote the poem that's in Four Weddings and a Funeral at the Funeral, and he's the one who described his own face as saying, it looks like someone left a cake out in the rain. So there you go. This whole show comes full circle eventually. Doug Jones, Steal My Sunshine. Was that Len? Ugh. Yeah, I'm not too crazy about that song either. Betty Anderson says Summertime in the Beach Boys. And I something, I know you guys well enough, right? I can tell you a secret. Every now and then I think to myself, should I tell you guys something or no? Sub GR77 says, hey, did you know that the song Sugar Sugar by the Archies is the only song to chart that was written for a cartoon? I never would have thought about that before. I know that Ron Dante, who was the lead singer in that song, I believe, was in a whole bunch of other bands, and he actually had several hits as a one-hit wonder. I think he also sang in the Cufflinks. I could be wrong about that, but Ron Dante, I'm pretty sure, was the lead singer on Sugar Sugar. But the Archies was a made-up band of studio musicians for a song for the cartoons. But what I was going to tell you is this. At one point in time when I was growing up, I was a big Beach Boys fan. And I owned Endless Summer, and I owned Spirit of America. And then when I realized I had a bunch of good music that wasn't on those best of collections, I then went out and bought the original albums. And, the Beach Boys, to people who don't know them, the music, are often just written off as being like just not a novelty act, but beach music and so on. And number one, Brian Wilson was a composing genius. Okay, he was an absolute genius. The guy who wrote the bulk of the music, bulk of the stuff, and he's also behind the production of a lot of it. And like Good Vibrations is a masterpiece. And it was Brian Wilson's genius that allowed that song to get made like that. But also like the album Pet Sounds, which has several good songs on it, is a masterpiece. And so there was a point in time where I had a complete collection of everything the Beach Boys did, and they put out something new, I'd get that also. And I saw them in concert probably 15 or 20 times growing up. I remember going to see them at Pine Knob every summer, long before I was old enough to drive. And later on, they used to come to Pine Knob in Detroit, now the DTE Energy Theater, Pine Knob. And it's an outdoor amphitheater. And they would come do several shows in the evening, and then they do a Saturday or Sunday with a matinee. And it was always kind of fun to go see them on a matinee, because if you had a nice day with good weather, you're outdoors, it's 80 degrees out, you can be sitting in the pavilion if you want the shade, you're sitting there, otherwise you go out and hang around. And the Beach Boys come out, and I saw them virtually every iteration they toured in, including I saw one year where Brian Wilson toured with them. So Brian Wilson stopped touring with them for many, many years. And he came back out and he toured with them I forgot what year it was, in the early 80s. But I saw them obviously with Dennis, I saw them with Carl, I saw them with Brian. And unfortunately now, Dennis passed away, Carl passed away, and they toured with a bunch of other musicians and stuff. But, like most songs you recognize basically by the, hey, Jay Paul, I'm telling you a secret right now. The secret is I was a big Beach Boys fan. So the main thing you recognize in a song is the voice, usually, right? So if Mike Love is singing fun, 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 it sounds like the Beach Boys, even if Carl's not there or Dennis is not there. It's sad, but so, and I know that Al Jardine, who is the non-related member of the Beach Boys of the original group, Al Jardine at one point in time broke off, as he still might have, with his own band going out and doing Beach Boys music. But I never would have imagined, because I remember back in the 80s, late 70s, early 80s, thinking that, like, wow, these guys have been around forever. 40 years ago, they're still around. Toby Kenobi says, Blue Suede, Hooked on a Feeling, another one-hit wonder. There you go. Danny Bupri says, Glenn Campbell was a Beach Boy. Yes, Glenn Campbell did a lot of studio work for people, too. And Glenn Campbell was, I believe, involved in a lot of their early recordings and so on. And I think he may have toured with them for a little bit. Jason Johnson's checking in from Westland. Thank you for checking in, my friend. Know that area well. Groovy Baby says, Canadian Andy Kim co-wrote Sugar. That's an interesting point, because Andy Kim, of course, is also the guy who recorded the song Rock Me Gently, which is a great song. And just to show you how funny this is, let me see if I got it here. I've actually got my, it's not on here. Never mind. I was looking at my playlist because I've got a song by Andy Kim on my playlist, but it's not on the phone. So, Peter Woolworth says the Wrecking Crew did all the instrumental work on the Beach Boys albums. Well, on the earlier Beach Boys albums, it depends on what era you're talking about and so on. But yeah, the bulk of it was, and the Wrecking Crew. I mean, like for instance, I know the Kay. What's the woman's name? The bass player. There's the woman bass player who did a lot of the early work for them as well. And the cool thing about the Beach Boys is the harmonies and the vocals. And so, they would go in and they'd sing it, but the musical stuff. But there's a documentary, I forgot what it's called, but there's a documentary where they have footage of them shooting or recording Pet Sounds. And watching the process take place is absolutely amazing, because they filmed some of it. And I'm not sure if it was that interesting back then, but it is certainly interesting now. Doug Jones, in the summertime when the weather is fine. I believe that's Mungo Jerry. Fiona Fairchild, Strawberry Alarm Clock, Incense and Peppermint, Psychedelic Bubblegum. Yeah. It's like the Electric Prunes. I had too much to dream last night. It's a great song. I have no idea who they are, where they came from, where they went. Song Yardbird, The Four Seasons, Big Girls Don't Cry. It's interesting. The Four Seasons had a bunch of great music also. And they got kind of pigeonholed because of Frankie Valli's singing style. The high falsetto is not as popular. wasn't popular for very long. But they've got some great music. But the problem, of course, is that the songs are really short. So there's great songs that are 1:55 long or 2 minutes long, So Toby Kenobi has a video on YouTube about the Wrecking Crew. Yeah, there's been some good documentaries about them, which I'm sure you can find there. So Adrian Davis, and none of the Finnish metal bands like Demolish. Never heard of them. I've heard of Stratovarius and Nightwish and a few of the others. They're very good. They're very talented. However, I've not gone out and bought a lot of their stuff. MH08 points out Crimson and Clover over and over and over and over. It's funny. It's a great song. Tom James and the Shondells, who are from, believe it or not, Niles, Michigan, which is down here. And Niles is closer to Chicago than it is Detroit. And the band did the song Hanky Panky, which is almost an unlistenable thing, but it was a hit back at the time, got them a record deal. And they had a bunch of really good stuff. And if you're into that kind of music, I highly recommend you check out Tommy James and the Shondells' other stuff. Dragging the Line is good. Ball of Fire is good. Of course, I Think We're Alone Now, which was covered by Tiffany. And of course, Mirage, which they claim was inspired by them accidentally putting I Think We're Alone Now on the record or on the recording rack backwards because it sounds like the same chords but in reverse. But I could be wrong about that. Who knows? Song Yardbird asks about Bjork. What's the one song I like by Bjork? Army of Me. Is it Army of Me? It's from a movie, Tank Girl. Tryfingers, The Grassroots, Live for Today. Danny Bupriest is the lead female guitarist for Alice Cooper is really good. You know, I apologize. I don't know who that is. I can also tell you, and it's going to bug me because I remember the name. But Natalie Merchant. I saw Natalie Merchant do I saw Natalie Merchant in concert at Pine Knob years ago. And she had a guitar player who was a female who was unbelievably good. Unbelievably good. One of the best guitar players I've ever seen. And she was doing Natalie Merchant stuff, which is not known for its guitar work. But I remember watching her going, she's good. She's good. And she only toured with Natalie for a year or two. And then she went off on her own. But I found video of her performing with Natalie Merchant during that time frame. And it's astounding. And it's always one of these things where you need to find just the right person and just the right music and then the band and it all works. And, obviously there's some bands out there that can, interchange musicians and go, oh, we just need a drummer. Yank this one out and throw this one in. I just finished reading the book by Robbie Robertson called Testimony. In fact, Steve's Book Club. There we go. I just read this book. And you'll have to trust me on this one, but I got a picture of Robbie Robertson on my studio wall here. I love Robbie. And Robbie Robertson, of course, is the lead singer, not the lead singer, but the lead songwriter for the band. And then he also did sing a little bit, but I jokingly tell people that Robbie Robertson and the band were so talented that Robbie Robertson is the fourth best singer in the group. There's like 5 guys in the band. But I just finished reading his book, and he was talking about the chemistry of the band, the guys in the band. So there's Robbie Robertson, Lee Von Helm, Rick Danko, Richard Manuel, and Garth Hudson. And these guys, it's a guitar player, there's a drummer, it's a bass player, there's a keyboard player, and this other guy who floats between different. And they did at one time or another actually work with other people, but it wasn't the same. It was the chemistry and the uniqueness of it all. And so it's always interesting. Yeah, Joel Jensen says the bassist is Carol Kay. Carol Kay. I knew I had the last name. So Danny Bupriest's T-Rex, Bang a Gong. Actually, T-Rex had a bunch of good songs. Bang a Gong, Jeepster, a couple others. I forgot the name of the album. I had one of the. I have the CD of one of their things. Baby Packrat said I roadied for the band once. When was that? You have to remember the band. They played at Woodstock. That's how far back they go. And then they broke up basically when they shot the movie The Last Waltz. They got back together again a couple times after that, but that was pretty much the end of that era. And well, I remember going to see the movie The Last Waltz when it came out at the theaters. And I knew a bunch of their music, but not all of it. But I didn't understand the history of it. So like when Ronnie Hawkins came out and played with them, I'm like, who's this guy? So there's a whole story there. Ever in Transit 42, 10,000 Maniacs. Of course, that's the band that Natalie Merchant was in. Bill Taylor, Electric Warrior. That's it. That's a great album cover, too. It's a great album cover. And Mark Keppel, hello from Buffalo, New York. I hope everyone is staying safe, doing the best we can. Johnny Knoxville, Bang a Gong is Power Station. Yeah. Power Station did a couple covers. They're one of the bands that covered that. Thanatos Felicitas. Brian May from Queen once said, I did not know how good we were until I started playing with others. That's funny. I believe it too. What always blows my mind is when you look at these bands, whether, the Beatles, Queen, Aerosmith, and you go back and you listen to their earliest stuff, and then they've survived for a length of time, and you look at the later stuff, and you watch the progression. It's amazing to me. But somebody like Queen who's been touring for as long as they have, and obviously, Adam Lambert from American Idol. I don't know if he still is, but for a while was touring with Queen, and he actually auditioned for American Idol, singing Bohemian Rhapsody a cappella. And a few years later, he's singing with Queen at festivals around the world. Talk about a dream come true. But it's remarkable because I've seen those performances and I go, well, this guy's doing a good job of the vocals. But you watch Brian May on guitar, I'm like, that guy's good. Been around a while, but he's good. So Mark Keppel's in West Seneca, which I'm guessing is near Lake Geneva in New York. You guys talking about New York, upstate? Lincoln Microphone LLC says, nice, RE20. As a reference to this microphone, my friends, thank you very much. I appreciate that. It is, in fact, a nice microphone. It works. At least people are responding as if they can hear me. Jim Bergen says, hey, you hear English bands sing, yet they don't have the accent. Why is that? Same reason you wake them up in the middle of the night, they haven't got the accent either. Sorry. Just kidding. Oh, boy. Yeah, no, it's funny because the band in the book, Robbie Robertson talks about his life, and he grew up in Canada, and for years listening to their music, I just assumed they were all from down south because Levon Helm is from down south, and they've got a bunch of songs that seemingly have something to do with down south, and The Night They Rolled Dixie Down or The Wait sounds like down south, and no, it's a Canadian guy writing this stuff. But Robbie Robertson basically decided he'd been told by Ronnie Hawkins, if you want to ever get a job playing guitar, come on down to Arkansas where we're hanging out and I'll get you in the band. And he talked his mom into letting him take a bus to Arkansas from Canada at the age of 16. And at the border guard goes, where are you going, son? He's like, oh, I'm going to Arkansas to visit relatives. And the guard goes, oh, okay, and lets him go. And I mean, nothing wrong with that, but the point is that he's a 16-year-old traveling alone, and he winds up joining the band, and he's not even old enough to be in a bar, let alone drink. And so Ronnie would basically say, dude, just stand in the shadows and hopefully no one will notice. They've got a little kid up here on stage. So unbelievable story. Great story. MH08 is ABBA, the only band whose name is a palindrome. I wonder about that. I don't know. There was a band from the 70s its name was Angel, and their logo was a symbol that you could flip upside down and it would read Angel the other way too. but that's not a palindrome. So I don't know. That very well could be. So, yeah, Bill Taylor, Geneva, New York is the north end of Seneca Lake. Watkins Glen is the other end. I did the guest DJ spot there, WLLW, where they taught me how to shut up and rock. And I got to see Lake Seneca. Did not get to visit Watkins Glen. I wasn't in town that long, so. JJ CEO 40 points says aha is a palindrome, but not the way they spell it, because they go I'm pretty sure there's a space there. Aha is one of my favorite bands, by the way. Since I confessed to you that I like the Beach Boys, I have to tell you I've got several aha albums. I will argue with you that their first album, Hunting High and Low, is a masterpiece. And they put out a lot of good stuff since then. And sadly, I've never seen them play because they never got much attention here in America. So one of my bucket list things would be to see aha play. Although they've also retired a few times. One of these days, if they ever play, and I have enough lead time, I'm going to go see them, regardless. By the way, someone just mentioned somebody else here. Oh, the Alan Parsons Project. Love that stuff. Yeah, no, I like the Alan Parsons Project. Alan Parsons Project is a very interesting band, not the least of which it's led by Alan Parsons, but he's not the singer. Much like Manfred Mann is not the singer of the Manfred Mann Band either. And so if you look at the credits on Alan Parsons Project album like I, Robot, it'll actually list the vocalists like Wolfson. Is that one of the guys' names? And so that's why some of the songs have a slightly different feel to them. But Alan Parsons Project, it's real spacey stuff in the late 70s. Album rock, these 8-minute long songs with these like 3-minute long introductions of, synthesizers and so on. Johnny Knoxville just threw down the gauntlet and said Mike and the Mechanics. Is that the Living Years? Oh boy. Yeah, several people pointed out the bit about how some people who sing can sing perfectly well, but they stutter when they speak. And it has to do with which part of your brain controls the speech. And I apologize, I forgot who said it in there, but it's I've heard that also. Mel Tillis, is he the guy that's the country singer who had a pretty heavy stutter when he talked, but he could sing. And that's one of those great, mysteries of life, So Tiff's Bikes, thanks for going live. Hey, thanks for checking it out. Yeah, I had a little screw up at the beginning. I think about half the people are still sitting in the other room looking at a blank wall going, hey, where'd he go? Betty Anderson, you'll be getting a Viper tattoo. No. I got the Viper car, the model. Got the Viper mug. And I've got the full-size Viper. I have a Viper t-shirt. But I don't have any tattoos yet. So not yet. Not yet. MH08 Jim Neighbors. Okay. I'm going to ask the question that I think many of us have wondered about. And Rick 0000 says, you must be a Van Halen fan. Yes and no. I like their first album. I've seen them in concert twice. I've been backstage at one of their concerts. But some of their later stuff, I love Eddie. Eddie's a great guitar player, though. I mean, he's one of the greatest ever. So, Jim Neighbors. There we go. I knew I had a rant coming. I won't rant too much, but I get a channel on my cable called MeTV, and they show a lot of stuff from the old days, MASH, and Little House on the Prairie, and Happy Days, and they show Gomer Pyle, USMC, and if you watch the credits, it appears that the U.S. Marine Corps, the USMC, cooperated with the making of that show. And I'm trying to figure out why. Because that show makes the Marines look so stupid that I don't understand. Like, did they not read the scripts? The basic script of Jim Neighbors on Gomer Pyle is, we have this lovable doofus who appears to have an IQ of about 85. And he's going to be a bumbling idiot. And he's going to have this hard-nosed drill sergeant trying to turn him into a Marine, and hilarity will ensue. And the plots, because I've watched a couple of them, I'll admit, I'm mesmerized. I can't figure this out. Everyone I've watched, I'm like, if I was the Marines, I'd sue them for this. This is false light defamation. What? I don't understand. Why would the Marines want that? Unless there was a time when the Marines were trying to get people to volunteer and actually were thinking, hey, if we make it look like it's fun and like, Lucille Ball could have joined the Marines, maybe they'll get more people to join. I don't know. So Ram 50 V8 says, Steve, as a former Marine, I can answer that question. Please do. I'm curious. Why would the Marines be in favor and helping them make Gomer Pyle? I don't understand. JJ CEO says Gomer Pyle is canceled in the CBS Rural Purge. That doesn't surprise me. So they were getting a lot of heat in the press, Ram 50 V8 says. Okay, so what was the thinking? That by showing it as a goofball place where anybody can join and have a yuck with the drill sergeant? Thomas Cass points out McHale's Navy and F Troop. Okay, I'm not saying it was the only bad depiction of our military. I'm just saying, as I don't know if the Army or the infantry actually cooperated with F Troop, they have them make that. But it's clear that the Marines actually worked with Gomer Pyle to make that. So, Ram 50 V8 says that it's making the Marines seem a bit more human. Yeah, I mean, I can see that, but the point is, I think they made him look not just more human, but also kind of goofy. And I don't know. It's one of those things where maybe it's the time. Maybe back then it wasn't as bad. But if you watch an episode of Gomer Pyle now, you do want to punch the TV set. And I'm not a Marine, and I'm just assuming that a guy who would be a Marine or an ex-Marine would look at that and go, "Ooh, that's displaying us in a really bad light." Thomas Cass, Hogan's Heroes. That's another show. It's on MeTV. Hogan's Heroes is on right after Green Acres, which I love. Ram 50 V8 says, I can tell you the first half of Full Metal Jacket is 100% correct. Full Metal Jacket's a great movie. And that's where R. Lee Ermey came from. R. Lee Ermey, you know the guy I'm talking about. He's a hard-nosed former drill instructor. And I believe they brought him on, and I could be wrong on some of this, but they brought him in and he acted as a drill sergeant, but he was playing a drill sergeant and he used to be a drill sergeant. And so he was basically doing it realistically because that's what he used to do. And I'd heard that from several people said that they watched it and it gave them like flashbacks when they were in basic, in the Marines. So R. Lee Ermey was over the top, but guess what? That's how they are. So Song Yardbird said Hogan's Heroes was the worst. Hogan's Heroes is strange. It's something you look back on, because I've watched a few episodes now, most recently, and you watch it and you go, I kind of get what they're trying to do here, but it doesn't age well. Let's put it that way. Nobody Important says Full Metal Jacket is basically 2 movies. Yeah, I guess that's, and a lot of movies do that, where they have you immersed in something for a while that you forget there's another thing that comes after that, Chuckster 255, have you ever heard Jim Nabors sing? Of course I have. I watch the Indy 500 every year. Jim Nabors, I believe he's from Indiana, often sang whatever the state song is of Indiana. before the Indy 500. And he's got a great singing voice. Jim Nabors got a great voice, period. I mean, the guy, he invented that character of Gomer Pyle, but he had a great voice and he could sing. So it's interesting. Johnny Knoxville, call me Francis, I'll kill you. Calm down, Francis. Back home in Indiana. Back home again in Indiana. J. Paul, thank you very much. I forgot the name of the song. Danny Beaupre, the show A-Team. I've never watched it. There's a couple weird gaps in my TV knowledge, and that's one of them. And I think it had to do with how old I was when it came out. And it always struck me as being like a children's show or something. I don't know why. Never watched it. I know all about, of course, Mr. T. And then the blonde-haired guy who was in charge of them. But beyond that, and they drove a van. That's all I know. Thomas Cast. I remember the episode of Beverly Hillbillies when Jed was going to buy the Destroyer. I don't remember that particular episode, but the Beverly Hillbillies was pure genius. Pure genius. Several good episodes come to mind, including the one involving Crawdad. Who's driving up Crawdad? The one where some bankers are convinced that Jed is a super banking genius. Jethro's a mathematical genius, and that Ellie Mae is conducting biological research, and Granny is working on like fuels and explosives. And it's one of those things, either you get it or you don't. Johnny Knoxville, B.A. Baracus. It rings a very, very faint bell. Tom, Charlie's Angels and Love Boat. Charlie's Angels was an interesting one because there was a time on television when you could just simply come up with an excuse to have a couple pretty people running around on camera, and that would turn it into a hit show. Three's Company, Charlie's Angels. And then, of course, Charlie's Angels, the one thing I do like about that show is that when one of them would quit, they'd just say, screw it, and just replace her. And for whatever reason, there's shows out there like Friends, where one person is thinking about quitting and people start panicking, like, oh, it's going to end the show. I always thought that as a joke, they should just write people off and just replace them with make that part of the joke. But they never did it. So, J. Paul says you were probably an older teen during A-Team out doing something. That could be. Amateur Shooter Soap, again, another show I never watched. Billy Crystal's on that, right? I don't think I've seen a single episode of Soap all the way through. Love American Style, Fiona Fairchild. Here's a little known fact. Happy Days was originally an episode part of Love American Style. And they did an episode, not a skit, but a little episode of Love American Style about something being back in that time period. And it was so popular that they spun that into the TV show Happy Days, which I learned that reading an interview with one of the developers of Happy Days. So, Johnny Knoxville, Love Boat. Yeah. One of the interesting things about Love Boat was that it was basically where you went to go when your career as an actor or actress was about to die. And so there'd be people who leave shows. And I'll give you an example. Frank Burns, Larry Linville from MASH, left MASH. And I heard various reasons as to why he left MASH. And I think one of them was simply he was sick and tired of playing this one character for so long. And someone like that leaves, and it's like, well, what are you going to do now? Because everyone knows that it's Frank Burns, And so people like him would be looking around, and when they ran out of stuff and no one was taking them up on the offers, their agent's going to go, well, I could probably get you a Love Boat. And so next thing you know, and so Love Boat was always, there's the Captain Stubing and the shipboard entertainment director, I guess they called it back then. And the doctor, the bartender, and Gopher who's the senator, that kind of thing. And but then there'd be a bunch of special guests, special stars, guest stars. And some of them would be big names, some of them wouldn't be big names, but a lot of them were at the tail end of their career. And then they would do goofy things like, one guest star is the Dallas Cowboy cheerleaders back when that was a big deal. So I remember watching that. It was in reruns at some point in time on some channel I got. I remember watching it going, huh. I remember that guy from that show or that guy from that show. So Thomas Case reminds us that at one point Granny was fighting a giant jackrabbit, which was actually a kangaroo. She'd probably been drinking some of her medicine too. Oh boy. Mark Reynolds, The Addams Family. Yeah, you know, it's funny. I like The Addams Family. There's a big debate, of course, Addams Family or Munsters. I like The Addams Family. To me, is a little more intellectual, if that's possible. But what's funny or sad, depending on how you look at it, is how they ruined The Addams Family in the movies. Because, for instance, Thing is the hand that just appears places and then disappears. It's a disembodied hand. And for the movies, they decided to go, oh, let's just show the whole hand. So Thing is a hand running around, which doesn't make any sense. And it was much funnier when you weren't sure, what is Thing? Like, is there more to the hand? Like, could the arm come up further? Is there a whole person back there? Or what is it? And it's a great example where the producers of The Addams Family literally didn't understand what was funny about that. And I suspect that somebody was involved who just didn't care for the show and just said, oh, well, it's just, we can CGI that now. Let's just do those CGI. So never quite got that. Bill Taylor jumping the shark. Yeah. That's the saying came from, of course, Happy Days. Cop Cuffs says, hey, Johnny Knoxville, Daisy Duke in her short shorts. I assume you guys are discussing the merits of Dukes of Hazzard. Daisy Duke goes down in history as having an article of clothing named after her. You can actually say, I saw a girl wearing Daisy Dukes. I saw a woman wearing Daisy Dukes. You can't go to school wearing those Daisy Dukes. Everyone knows they are. How often does it happen? You know, that's nothing else. On you know, that could be a resume or it could be your tombstone. Popularizer of Daisy Dukes. So there you go. Wild Bill 57 agrees with me about Thing. Yeah, I watched the first Addams Family movie, and I was just so. I know they made several more. Never watched any more. John Wynn, Hardcastle and McCormick. That's one of the ones I never saw. I know it's two guys. Do they fight crime? Are they cops? I'm not sure. Toby Kenobi says the actor who played Lurch was also the Thing on the television series. I think I've heard that before. Lurch was an interesting character. Ted, what's his name? Somebody come up with it. Guy's got that great voice, and he almost never spoke. And apparently, they originally had envisioned his character as never speaking at all. And somewhere along the line, somebody heard him do that weird, disappointed growl. Ted Cassidy, thank you, Toby Kenobi, and Hammond Egger. And somebody heard him do that, like, oh, that's funny. That's funny. Let's do that. So they let him do that, and then somewhere along the line, he did the Follow Me, and so I don't know if he ever did much more than Follow Me or the disappointed thing. But what's funny about it is that those were, oh yes, you rang. Yeah, you rang, Follow Me, and and the guy, it's one of those great examples of a guy who had like three lines over and over again. You knew he was going to say it, and it's funny each time. By the way, Daniel Kester points out that Lurch also played an android in the Star Trek episode. Yeah, Ted Cassidy appeared a couple times. I'm trying to remember. Somebody else mentioned Twilight Zone, Star Trek, the Addams Family, and he may have been in a couple other things, but the problem with him was that he was huge, just a giant of a man. And it's hard to It's hard to cast him in just typical dramatic roles, I think. Ever in Transit 40 says, we used to call Daisy Dukes cutoffs. Yeah, but there is a distinction because, like, I've worn cutoffs before. Guys wear cutoffs, girls wear cutoffs, women wear cutoffs. But if they're Daisy Dukes, they are a slightly different subset of cutoffs. I would not wear Daisy Dukes, and trust me, nobody wants to see that. Daniel Newman, did you see the episode of Black Adder about the dictionary? You know, I've not seen Black Adder. I saw somebody reference that the other day about how funny it was. I just realized I've never seen it, so I'll check it out. Wikipedia says Ted was 6'9". Dave Beddoes, thank you very much, my friend. It's kind of funny. I actually was at a car show and I brought my Viper, the real one, not the model. And a guy came up, was talking to me who's 6'8". This guy was towering over me. He's asking me questions about my Viper. And finally I looked at him, I go, dude, I go, how tall are you? And he goes, 6'8". And I go, I got news for you. You couldn't fit in my car. And he goes, really? And I go, yeah, because I have the seat all the way back. I've got, all the room that's in there. And at 6'2", I've got about this much space above my head. Now, he might be able to get in there and kind of like put his knees up and kind of, but he'd be wedged. He'd be wedged in there. It would not be comfortable. So somebody else mentioned Andre the Giant. Bill Taylor, Andre the Giant, the Princess Bride. And I've seen some documentaries and videos about Andre the Giant. And Andre the Giant is one of the most fascinating people who's ever lived. I know I say that a lot about people, but it's true. Andre the Giant, number one, was a huge, huge guy. He had a medical condition. I forgot what it's called, but his body continued to grow. And we look at Andre the Giant in The Princess Bride or when he's wrestling with Hulk Hogan or whatever, and you think that, he's a big guy. This is what he does. Andre the Giant had to live his life like that. So, for instance, he couldn't dial a phone with just his fingers. Acromegaly, Sean Jensen. Sounds familiar. And so he had a hard time like dialing a push button phone. He couldn't fit in a car. And he's from France, so little French cars, he wouldn't fit in them. And he kept growing. And so it's one of those things that you don't really stop to think about because, you see somebody in a movie, on television or on a talk show, and you only see that little bit of their life that they've decided to let you see. And it's quite often being presented like they're in a movie or something like that. And it's all being shot and like that. Think about just the average everyday life of going through life that big. Andre the Giant couldn't go someplace without everyone going, "Oh my gosh, look at that huge guy. Wait, that's Andre the Giant." So it's a crazy thing to think about. David Person says that Gwyn Herman Munster was 6'5". 6'5". It's pretty tall, and he's another guy with a great voice, by the way. Remember he's the the judge in My Cousin Vinny. What's a Ute? Wild Bill 57 says the Princess Bride cast loved Andre. I heard he was a nice guy. Everything I saw says he's a nice guy. Imagine if he wasn't, life would have been really, really difficult. Fred Hill, the Giant was 7'3". 7'3". That means he had a hard time almost in every aspect of his life because things aren't built for people that large. I forgot what he weighed, but it was also he weighed a lot. Fred Hill, what about Jaws from Moonraker? Yeah. JJ CEO 40 says, I saw Andre the Giant at a live event. The bouncers at the event looked like kids. Ever in Transit 42 says, I have a friend who's 5'19" tall. That's pretty tall. I'm doing my math right. Song Yardbird says, no matter how down I am with the state of the world, you are a bright spot I look forward to. Thanks, Steve. I read it all the way through to make sure there wasn't a joke at the end. Thank you. No, I appreciate that. I was the. We're gonna have to wrap it up here pretty soon because I've been going for about an hour 40. But I want to let you guys know I put out a couple of videos last week where I groused a little bit about people complaining and so on, and I'm entertained by those, and I get a lot of emails and comments from people who say, Steve, just want to let you know, for everybody like that out there who doesn't like you, there's more of me who do. There's more people like me who do, and I get some very, very kind emails and so on. So I want everyone to know that even when I'm grousing, if I didn't think it was entertaining, I wouldn't do it. And if it didn't entertain me, I wouldn't do it. So I have a lot of fun, but really the videos I do, I have a lot of fun with those. The live streams, I have a lot of fun with these, so I don't, come in here and talk about anything. I don't care. I've got no agenda. The only thing I ever have an agenda with is occasionally I got something I got to show you on camera. Like the toilet paper. Thank you, Matthew. And also the books. Thank you, Daniel, for these. I appreciate it. And, like I said, if you feel like putting pen to paper, P.O. box is at the end of every one of my videos. You can mail me, email me, message me, whatever. But I do appreciate it. Thank you very much for the kind words. I'm going to wrap it up now. So I will talk to you soon. We'll do it again next Sunday, 1:00. Until then, behave yourself. Bye-bye.